What is going on, everybody, and welcome to Turn 2, an MLB betting show presented to you by the GoldSheet and WagerTalk Media. I'm your host, Eric Pauly, the Director of Analytical Content at GoldSheet, joined with a special guest today to discuss NRFIs and YRFIs, no run first inning, yes run first inning, and first five versus full games. That special guest is WagerTalk handicapper Drew Martin. Drew, welcome to the show. Glad to have you. How have you been doing? How have you been doing lately?
Eric, I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me. And I'll tell you, I like the name of the show, Turn Two. It's a great thing when you're betting a baseball team and they can actually make two outs with just one hit here into the field. So I'm always one of those guys. It's like, oh, turn it when it's a grounder up the middle. And hey, the Gold Sheet to be a part of this. This is something. Going back way more than a decade here, Eric. I started out at JP Morgan, and I can remember being in the office there in Atlanta, and so many of the financial advisors in the office on Thursdays would go to the printer and print out the Gold Sheet, and we would read it right before, the football weekend. So to be on here with you and talking sports betting, it's, one of those like lifelong kind of full circle moments, man. So thanks for having me, Eric. And excited to get into dig into these kind of different angles to try to grab more winners and losers with you.
Yeah, love to hear that, Drew. Obviously, such great history at Gold Sheet, and now we are moving forward. It's also a great time to mention that not only can you find all the picks for the Gold Sheet at WagerTalk.com, we also have a daily MLB stat sheet, $2 a day, $15 for a week, where you can get access to advanced analytics, stats, pitcher, hitter splits, and more. Let us do the work for you. And also, it's the middle of June already, believe it or not. So football season is on the horizon. So we have an early bird special for football at goldsheet.com. And we will have more information on plays and picks on wagertalk.com. But Drew, you're normally in the host chair, so now I'm happy I get to ask you some questions. For those who are not familiar, Drew hosts the MLB First Pitch Show on WagerTalk TV Monday through Friday. Does an amazing job. Goes live 2 p.m. Eastern. But Drew, now I get to ask you some questions. We're talking no run first inning, yes run first inning. This is a market that obviously exploded in popularity over realistically the last 1 or 2 years. It's a very quick sweat. You're relying on a team to either get 6 outs or relying on one run to cross the board within those first 6 outs. Tons of factors to consider here. Obviously, you have a starting pitcher. You can go into their initial statistics, how they do the first time through the order, how they do in the first inning. But a lot of something I think that a lot of people who are more novice bettors forget about the fact is, yes, you have a pitcher, coming into a game, maybe the lineup's a little cold or however you want to kind of frame it, but you're probably going to have to get 6 outs of 6 of the best hitters between the two sides. So let me take a step back here, Drew. Talk to me about your process in evaluating when to bet a NRFI or a YRFI and kind of some tips, tricks, or what you focus in on when evaluating this market.
Sure, Eric. And when we were preparing for the show, you're coming up with some topics here. And this is actually one that I'm going more in learning as well. And granted, we're all students here. When you stop learning, that's when you're probably, gonna head for some trouble. But I always go back to like playing sports and what are kind of what you learn from being on the field, and then also using stats, and then coming up with bets to kind of get an edge on the marketplace. And I thought you brought up a good point. You got to remember, these are most likely the 6 best hitters in the lineups, in both lineups. So that is a huge factor. How talented is the top of the order? And another thing that I try to bring in, and this is something that I've learned from just playing the sport of baseball, is I do think there is something to each pitcher in how prepared they are for the first inning. We've heard in the past of guys, starting pitchers coming in and not throwing enough bullpen, reps before the first inning because, hey, a lot of times they're looking to go 7, 8, and even 9 innings and not being ready to go. And then sure enough, it can show up in their yes first run or no first run, how they do in the first inning. So I like to really go back to how each pitcher has trended in their first inning. And sure enough, like for an example, this is the guy I actually lost on last night as we're filming this on Tuesday, Zach Greinke. A guy that a lot of people have kind of written off here in this stage of his career. But sure enough, he was just on a 28-10 no run first inning, kind of trend here, Eric. And sure enough, the no run first inning didn't come in, but it was kind of the other team. But what I'm getting at is when you can find these starting pitchers where maybe their overall metrics aren't all that great, but they come in first inning ready to rock. That was something I had circled as maybe no run first inning might have a little edge here. And then also bringing in, the lineups and how they fared more recently in the first inning, and then kind of combining those two and then going after, hey, will there be a run scored or not? And then sure enough, the betting aspect of it, if you haven't bet a first inning, will there be a run scored? You get that little extra adrenaline rush, as a sports bettor, which is always a plus.
Yeah, it is such a fun sweat whether you're betting NRFI or YRFI. But I think you make a great point when it comes to handicapping baseball. I also think it translates well to basketball, and it depends again on your level of competition you played when you did play that sport. Obviously, a big fallacy for gamblers and just the general public alike is that the way to be better at sports betting is to know more about sports. That's obviously not true. There's so many statistical, mathematical factors. The truth is you have to be better realistically at math than you are at knowing, the players. But at the same time, you can certainly get an edge by understanding certain concepts, whether it be in baseball, right? Like you tell a novice person, like, oh, the top of this lineup is loaded. They're definitely going to score one in this inning. But you have to understand that these pitchers, the day of that game, the days when they're resting after their last start, all they're doing is putting together game plans of how to attack these batters. So I'm not going to say it's as scripted as, well, it is honestly as scripted as you would say a first drive in an NFL start a half off the kickoff. You have a scripted drive where you're looking to put together your best plays. You practice it all week. You're going down that road. The pitchers have a script and know where to get batters out. So when you mentioned like you played and like you realized that like you would anticipate there being more no-run first innings. But when I played baseball with a collective group of a bunch of kids who ended up going D1, I did not. Our leadoff hitter was getting on base every single time, and we were scoring a run in that first inning. I'm not going to say like every single time, but more often than we weren't because of how talented the top of our lineup was back then. So things like that are huge to take into consideration because I think that people want to bet no because they don't want to believe that a run can be scored. They just want the 6 quick outs. There's 27 for each side in baseball. You just get, 3 of them each very quickly. But I don't really think that's been the case. So kind of just circling back now, when do you target your fees or yes run first innings? I know you mentioned that you're looking for trends and how they're doing in form. Are you kind of saying, okay, this person are you doing the same exact process, just flipping it on its head? Like they haven't been good. They've been allowing a lot of runs in the first. Let's just keep the train going. Or are you taking a different approach for looking at a yes run first inning?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I guess my initial reaction is looking towards the no run first inning. It's one of those things like as a totals bettor, my first look is towards the under, mainly because it's kind of like against the trend. A lot of people are looking to bet overs, and therefore I think you almost get a little bit of an advantage. But you're right. Maybe the YRFI is more of the counter trend bet here. And I guess I would just say, past experience with the starting pitcher and them giving up runs, then therefore I would look to bet the over. It's something, it kind of correlates with full game here, Eric. It happens at times, even at the MLB level, particularly with younger starting pitchers, they can tip their pitches, when they're in there grabbing the changeup. And sure enough, when that gets out on film, it lasts for a game or 2 or 3. So if you see a guy that, goes 5 innings and giving up no runs for a couple games in a row, and then all of a sudden he's getting blown up for 2 straight, that's something you got to circle, guys, and you got to pay attention to. So I would almost kind of bring that into my handicap of looking to fade that pitcher in his next start and looking to, see if there's an opportunity, combining it with the opposing lineup and how they do in first innings, how talented their top of the lineup is, and maybe look for a yes run in that first inning.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And then I think a good segue into a last question on this topic, kind of two-folded. So when you have 2 ace starting pitchers on the mound, obviously the public is going to want to bet no run first inning because you have 2 high quality starters. The odds are going to reflect that, saying you probably could even see up to a minus 130, minus 135 on a no run. At what point, Drew, for starters, do you kind of throw out the history and just say, like, there clearly is no value on this line and just pass? And two, is there any book in particular that you found to have better odds on NRFIs, or is it just a day-to-day line shop and wherever you find that best price, you lock that in?
Well, I mean, for the books, it's always line shopping. Yeah, I mean, like that kind of question would be, look for the best line no matter what. And I could throw out a couple names. To tell you the truth, I would rather throw out a couple names to kind of shy away from, if you don't mind, just because some of the names I don't know if we should get into. But like DraftKings, we've seen DraftKings both in their sides and on their yes run first inning and no run first inning kind of had that long spread, and you want to stay away from that, guys, because they're charging you more to make the bet. So I would kind of pump the brakes there. And guys, this can change. Sports books change. So in a month from now, a year from now, whatever, if they change their business model, where we bet can change as well. So keep that in mind. But your first side of the question, you mind reminding me here, Eric? Sorry about that.
Yeah, just when you have two aces on the mound, like when do you, instead of obviously seeing heavy juice on a NRFI, you got to probably look to the yes at that point, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in terms of like just volatility of the bet, it comes with this. Yes, run first inning, no run first inning, baseball betting in general. I feel that it is more volatile, in terms of like, as a sports bettor, comparing it to football, yes, one team can dominate the like total yards in football and go up and down the field and still lose the game to the other team, just given turnovers, special teams, something like that. But I feel like it happens more often in baseball. You will see one team hit line drives, hard hit rate all over the field, yet it's always going to a player or hitting into double plays at the inopportune time. Whereas in baseball, sometimes, and it can work in your favor as a sports bettor, that hey, they're dropping balls in, and maybe an error goes your way, something like that. And I just feel like it is a little bit more volatile in baseball, and it is even exponentially more because we're bringing it to the first inning with this topic. So, hey, sometimes you just got to, it's a marathon, not a sprint, particularly in the sport of baseball. And to answer your question a long way, but try to make it as short as possible here. I don't try to lay big juice in either way on this bet. I wouldn't go too much higher than say minus 130, minus 135. After that, I just feel like, you're rolling the dice a little bit with this bet, and to lay that much juice, you're really going to be on the long end of it a lot of the time over the long term.
Yeah, no, I certainly agree. This is a market where if I'm not getting plus money or around, a normal minus 110, I probably would want to stay away, just because you're asking for a lot to happen. And again, just six short outs either way. And like, again, just the way baseball is, I've seen it a million times. I watch the sport every single day. I've watched some wagers turn into winners because of an error leading to the floodgates opening, a bunch of runs scoring, and vice versa. I've lost a bunch of wagers for the same exact reason and way. So a lot to consider. But now let's move to another topic that is in a similar vein, but I think is also very interesting. The first 5 inning market versus the full game market. Now, for those who aren't aware, if you're not, that you can bet on the result, total, money line, and spread of the first 5 innings only, or the first half of a baseball game, obviously as well as you can for the full game. Last year I bet more first fives than I have this year. But I'm just curious, Drew, considering I know you're dabble more in the first 5 market. For starters, the bullpen and just eliminating that is the obvious reason why, but there obviously has to be more. There has to be a bigger reason to go into just that market. But talk to me, Drew. What kind of sways you toward looking at a first 5 over a full game, and what are some like just key metrics, facts, stats, or things that you look for when looking to say, you know what, I'd rather bet the first 5 here?
Sure. For first 5 betting, Eric, what I would do is, if it's a team, a starting pitcher in a lineup that I want to be betting on, and the bullpen has been taxed in the last couple days, that's the situation, the profile of bet, if you will, where I'm going to go first five on that team rather than full game, particularly if the other team has a really good bullpen. And a lot of times, guys, I'll go after the MLB slate day to day here and handicap the bullpen first. So I'm actually a guy this year, Eric, and in past seasons, I'm actually one that's going to nod the viewers to more of full game. And I know a lot of guys are getting into first five betting, hey, I only bet first fives, or I cut out the bullpen for whatever way. But I almost feel, man, we're getting to the point in baseball betting where a lot of the bettors out there are forgetting that the best thing about betting baseball is, well, there's a couple things, but in my opinion, the best thing about betting baseball is it's half off. It's half off pricing to bet baseball, guys. You're in the normal market, you're having to risk $110 to win 100 if you're betting almost any other sport. MLB, when you're betting this sport at most sports books, and if your sports book isn't offering dime lines, you need to find one that is, because they're widely available. Go check out the WagerTalk live odds screen. A bunch of sports books on there are. It's minus 105 on each side, meaning you're having to risk 105 to win 100. So it's half off pricing on the full game. You lose that in the first five. So that's kind of right off the bat. Your first look should be full game, not really first five, in my opinion. And I almost think that's kind of getting lost in as sports betting content is becoming more mainstream, Eric. So I'm kind of on the other side of just looking towards the first five. But getting into why I would bet first five, that would be the profile bet of why. But even more so, I think you should start off handicapping the bullpens and what bullpen is getting a high strikeout rate. And I say high strikeout rate because a lot of these relievers are coming in like high, stress situations where getting a strikeout is very important. There might be a runner on third base with one out. You do not want to hit. You do not want a deep fly ball. You want a strikeout to get that second out. So keeping in strikeout rate from the bullpen arms, particularly the top bullpen arms, and then going after those teams on the full game, I feel like there's a little bit of value there in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think another thing to look at when deciding between first five and full game is also understanding how some teams generate offense, right? So, like, for example, I'll use the Miami Marlins as a great example. We all know that the margin in one-run games has been ridiculous. They've, I'm not going to say lucked themselves into wins, but we know that this is not a powerhouse offensive team. You look at their series against the White Sox, the game that they ended up coming back in the ninth and winning 6-5, they scored 4 of their 6 runs leading up to that ninth inning where they scored 3 of them on just solo home runs. Then they come into Seattle last night on Monday and lose 7-1. They have only 1 solo home run again. That's just, I'm just saying, like, are teams' offenses something that you consider? Because if you have a team that singles and doubles teams to death, like the Mets when they're good, the Atlanta Braves, the Texas Rangers, obviously they'll have the long ball. And you have the Tampa Bay Rays who can hit the ball out of the ballpark at any moment, but also single and double teams to death. Are there teams where if they're like Miami and they have a problem generating runs that you maybe look for the full game because they have more opportunities to kind of get those home runs going? Or is that something you don't even consider because you can look at, like, again, a Rays or a Rangers, as we saw last night, who blew that early lead, who can score early and often? Are they more of a target for you in the first five?
It's an interesting question, Eric. It's funny you bring up the Marlins. Luis Arraez, he's flirting with 400, man, and Solar betting right behind him. He's flirting with already 20 home runs already. But it's one of those things where the rest of their lineup, you're right, it does struggle to put up runs. And that's 7-1. I was actually on that game on the Fish, and it was one of those where I don't know if you actually watched it, but they hit into a bunch of double plays. They made a couple errors, which extended innings. And then sure enough, 3-run home runs were hit on behind it. So it's one of those games where the 7-1 actually looked a lot worse than it really was. But hey, that's the sport of baseball and betting it. I guess I would say not necessarily. I wouldn't bet on full game any more or any less, given the, I guess, lack of offense. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I guess to answer your question, I really haven't thought of it that way in terms of a team not producing a lot offensively and therefore wanting to bet them full game. And again, I haven't brought that into my handicapping, but I would almost look at it the other way, unless maybe you have a reason why that I haven't thought of, because if you're going to give up the advantage of, your offensive statistics not being as good as your opponent, then you would want to shorten, the length of the game, because maybe you would want to bring the volatility more onto your side. That's the way I would think, just off the top of my head. But no, I haven't actually brought that angle into my handicapping.
Yeah, no, honestly, just a question I was thinking about when you were talking, because we were thinking about, of course, the first thought you would think of for looking at a first five is to eliminate the bullpen. But if it's a situation where the bullpen might be, worse than the starting pitching, and the team's offense is one that isn't as reliable and does not score early and often, that it could be an angle to, fade them on the first five, even if you like them on the full game, because they might not be able to get those bats going until they finally knock out that starter. But then again, with the first fives, with the dime lines not being there, and obviously, again, just if you have a great starter going on a first five, you're probably going to be paying a full game premium price on a first five. And there's also so much volatility that I don't know if you really want to get into that, right? Like, I feel like, and this could be wrong. This is, again, I don't have stats to bring stuff. This is kind of a feeling. I sometimes, and there are certainly examples where, of course, the first five is the bet. Starting pitcher ends up pitching better than expected. Team scores, 2-3 runs, and then, they end up losing the game in the sixth inning, and the other team goes on a run, and you would have lost the full game. But I just always feel as if I'm looking toward the full game because I want all 27 outs. But I guess it doesn't mean that it's going to always work out in your favor. Obviously, we're betting, and a million things can happen in baseball. But I feel like I tend to want the 27 outs. Is anything you think about in that situation, or again, you're kind of just sticking to that bullpen starter and trying not to really overthink this sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, the 27 ounce, I get your point there, and you get the half off pricing. So I'd go back to that as well. And maybe to add one more angle here, getting starting pitchers that go, 6-7 innings, guys. That's starting to become more of my handicap as well. And the reason I bring that up, Eric, is because a lot of these teams, when you look at their 9, their 8, meaning their closer and their setup guy, those are top arms, man. Those guys are lights out guys. And some teams, the 7th inning guy, he's pretty up there as well, particularly as we get later in the season, Eric, up against the trade deadline. What I look, and I almost don't like giving this out, but what I like to do is when a good team, right? Because if you're trading for a player and you're adding players to your roster, and they'll go get another team's closer to add into their bullpen arms. So therefore, they already have their closer and their setup guy, and then they're bringing another team's top arm into their bullpen. Watch out now. That team, circled on. Sometimes I feel like, the market doesn't fully factor in new bullpen arms. So we're probably a couple weeks away from that, if not, a little bit more. But when that does happen, that's an angle. Watch out, guys, because that team can usually be a money maker. The Houston Astros from a couple years ago become one of those, trading for a great bullpen arm, and it will happen again this year, most likely. So that's kind of an angle I look for as well going forward.
Yeah, I would be shocked if some of these bigger ticket teams do not go after some high leverage arms in the bullpen heading into the postseason. Just being able to shorten the game, having players who can come in and get 3 outs reliably, such a huge advantage for teams and such an underrated aspect. But Drew, I really wanted to thank you for taking the time to hop on. We have first pitch. I think this show is actually going to go live after first pitch goes live. So you'll see Drew and I on first pitch before you see us on turn 2. It's going to be a very exciting show. But Drew, any final thoughts, and where can the viewers and audience find your work and some of your best bets?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first pitch, you did a great job kind of teeing that up, guys. 2 o'clock Eastern time, right on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. You can get in there in the live chat box, chime in, ask away questions in the reply section. We're going live 2 o'clock Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. We also do early shows on Wednesdays and Thursdays, do them recorded, get them out early because there's a lot of day games. So that's kind of each and every day, giving out best bets on that. We're talking games. So if you're new to sports betting, come join us there. We try to kind of include everybody, you know, the newer bettors and the more kind of sophisticated bettors, if you will. We got all kinds of information there on First Pitch, the WagerTalk YouTube channel. And then I'm giving out free plays, premium picks, wagertalk.com, experts page, Drew Martin. That's where you can find me as well. And then on Twitter at Drew Martin Bets. So, Eric, again, man, thanks for having me. Always cool to be involved with the Gold Sheet, kind of full circle moment, man. So, congrats on the show. Turn 2, cool name, man. And look forward to breaking down some more baseball with you on First Pitch.
Yes, certainly, Drew. And we will certainly be having you back. The content train for Gold Sheet TV on Wager Talk TV is just beginning. Obviously, we have turn 2 going. And again, like I mentioned, it is 6:13. That means football season is on the horizon. So definitely be stay tuned for more football content. Drew will be back for football as well as more baseball. We have it. I'll reiterate that all picks and packages for Gold Sheet plays can be found at wagertalk.com, daily MLB stat sheet at goldsheet.com, and also early bird special $199 for the entire football season, college and pro, on goldsheet.com. So thank you again for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.